getting straight back from this video. Today's video is what if Dale survived in The Walking Dead. So basically what happened is Dale was killed on the farm by the Walker. So basically in this version, I'm going to have it where Dale doesn't encounter the Walker. So basically it comes down to Carl, because Carl didn't kill the Walker in the woods. So in this universe, Carl would kill the Walker, or Dale just doesn't approach it. But no matter what, in this episode Dale wouldn't die. So Dale is still alive in this episode. Rick and Shane would still have their fight, and Shane would still be killed, because nothing suggests to me that Dale being here doesn't change the events for me to believe that Shane would still be killed here, because Dale doesn't strike me as someone who'd be able to change the outcome of Rick and Shane's fight. So Dale's RV is the next thing, and Jimmy originally died here, so Dale would have more than certainly died in this episode, and would have died trying to escape the farm. But for the sake of argument, let's say that Dale had his back turned to try and save Andrea. Jimmy gets into the RV and he still dies. Dale would still escape with the Daryl, because Daryl would find him, and also Andrea in this universe, because Dale is now with Andrea, so she wouldn't be left behind. Season 3 would be a lot different, because Michonne wouldn't be with Andrea, so she'd be by herself. So she probably would still be around. Sasha and Tyrese would still encounter the group, and because they're a lot more wary, and I think with Dale being here, I do think they wouldn't join the group a lot earlier than they did, because even though Rick's hesitant and he did explain himself why he killed Shane, I think Dale would be understanding in that situation. It was in self-defense. So I feel like what would happen is Glenn and Maggie still get captured, right? So they get captured, but the big reason that they were able to find them was because of Michonne. So I think Rick would still find Michonne, but it would be a lot later in the timeline. So I think they would still encounter Michonne. Maybe she joins Tyrese's group. I think she would have joined Tyrese's group or something. Like Michonne, they would have had to do something to where she would join the show. So I think she'd be in Tyrese's group, and she would still have that friendship arc with Andrea. And Merle would still come back, so he's still a part of the group, which of course Dale would be okay with. Glenn's not having it. And the governor's still around, so that's important. He still attacks Woodbury, though. And Morgan's still here. So, Morgan, I feel like Rick would still encounter Morgan. I'm just going to put him in the group, because I think it's going to be easier. So I feel like Rick would be Dale, if he was there, would actually let Morgan join. But Andrea wouldn't die, because in this situation, because she's not with the governor, and she wouldn't be captured by him, she wouldn't have been killed. However, I still think Merle would have sacrificed himself, because that had nothing to do with Andrea's death. So he would still have tried to get Michonne, but Merle would still die, so the governor would still meet Tara and her family, so the governor, Merle's just dead, unfortunately for Merle. We still encounter Bob. I think Bob's still part of the group. The attack on the prison would still happen. And let me just go. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Laurie would still have her child, would still have Judith. So Laurie still dies, and T-Dog dies as well. Of course, without a picture of T-Dog, but he still dies. So not a lot to be said there. But season 4 wouldn't really affect it. Like the zombie plague would still be in there. You know, the sickness. I think Rick would still kick out Carol from the group. He still kicks her out for burning the bodies. I think Glenn and Maggie, they're still Glenn and Maggie, they're together. The governor still attacks the prison. Now, would Dale have been bitten instead of Herschel? That's a possibility, because Dale was bitten in the comics. But to keep things as the original in the show, I'm just going to say it's still Herschel that gets bitten. So Dale might have been bitten instead of Herschel. That is a possibility. But I think Dale's the voice of reason. I feel like he would try to reason with the governor first, and then the governor's like, nah, I'm getting my revenge. And Dale realizes it's not working out, would try to flee. So I feel like he would take Andrea, and I feel like then he would try to get the others to flee as well. But I still think Herschel would have been killed, because I don't think Dale, with more people, so with more people, there's probably going to be more casualties. So I think Herschel still dies. The surviving prisoners would still die because they did in the original. And did anyone else die beside Herschel? I don't think anyone else died in the prison. I don't think anyone actually died beside Herschel in the prison. So we're still encountering... which will Gabriel up here for now. So we're still encountering Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene. And let me get them into the groups to explain the next part of season 4. So I feel like Rick would still kill the governor, so he still dies. And in the group we have Carl, Rick, Andrea, and Michonne, with Carol, Tyrese, and Judith in the next group. Eugene, Rosita, Abraham, Glenn, Dale, and Tara. Daryl and Beth, which leaves Maggie, Sasha, Morgan, and Bob. So I feel like they would still get out. Everyone's still with their groups. Not you guys. They would still meet Gareth at Terminus. So we need to take out Beth, because Beth still gets captured. So Rick still kills the claimers, Daryl, and I think Rick still gets captured by Terminus, which Dale is really distraught over by these people. Now, I think the next possibility is Dale would have been killed at Terminus, because Dale originally died from the cannibals. So I think if we're trying to keep his death the same as in the comics, I don't know if he would have still gone out with Andrea. But assuming they keep everything similar to the comics, I think Dale would have died here. To be honest, I think Dale would die instead. Instead of that Tom character we saw like in that random episode. We saw him like once with his girlfriend, I think, and then we see him later at Terminus, which Rick realised who he was. So I think it will be more dramatic, because I think on the whole, nobody major really died at Terminus. So I think killing Dale would be a huge accomplishment for Gareth as an actual villain. So we're going to kill Dale here. Rick's still going to go mental and get everyone to still let Gareth and his crew die. Abraham and Rick almost fight each other, which Glenn stops, which that would have been an awesome fight. And I think Bob still gets captured, so he still gets tainted meat. Bob still gets killed. And Gareth still dies. Beth and Gabriel join the group. Beth would still be killed by Dawn. And Noah still joins, which doesn't affect anything, like Beth still dies. More people being here doesn't change that. Gabriel still joins the group. I think Rick is a lot more lenient, though, because Dale wouldn't have died so early on. So he would have still developed into a hardened survivor. But I think Rick would have listened more to reason. But because of the events in Terminus, I still think he would act very similar. More of a Shane, to be honest. Tyrese still would have been bitten. And all that. Morgan still does his clear arc and doesn't want to kill people. And yeah, that's really kind of it. So season 6 is interesting now, because basically at this point we haven't encountered Negan yet. So season 6 we still meet Aaron and Jesus, and I think Rick still punches Aaron, which I thought was pretty funny. So they join the group. Did anyone die in the 6th season? Like any major characters? I don't... Actually, yeah, Negan's still here, so we still encounter Negan, and he still kills Abraham and Glenn. I know there's many other people on that list that he could kill, but it's very speculative for me to assume that Negan kills Morgan, for example, because it's very speculative for me to assume that Morgan would be in the lineup in that line of fire where Rick originally found and tried to do trespass for Negan, because I'm trying to make this as a realistic story as possible. I'm trying to think of in-universe and the decisions Rick would make going forward if Dale was around, but now that he's not here, Negan, he still kills Abraham and Glenn. Season 7, we still have these guys, Ezekiel, Jerry, Eugene, Dwight. I think Sasha would still do the sacrifice thing with Abraham. Simon actually doesn't die till later on, so still sacrifices himself. I think here Andrea would be a lot more of a hardened survivor. Like, she'd be more like the comics, I think, with Sasha. Her and Sasha would be like basically the very similar characters. And I think we need to kind of... Do we need to kill some people off here? Shiva still goes. The Tiger. But not a lot to be said here. Now we're on to Season 8. And we still have to talk about Sadiq. Sadiq, the guy Carl saved. And he originally died there. I think it's not a good reason to kill Carl off. And I think instead of Carl dying, because I hate the fact he dies in the show. Bit of a spoiler there if you didn't know, but I assume that's why you're watching the What Ifs, if you've known what's happening. But instead of Carl dying, so Simon still gets killed. Instead of Carl dying, I'm actually going to kill Morgan here, because Morgan doesn't really have anything. No, Andrea. We kill off Andrea. So Andrea dying here would make things very interesting. Her sacrificing herself and Rick still sparing Negan, with Dwight still leaving the show because Daryl wants revenge. And Morgan still would leave at this point as well, so we're going to boot Morgan. They're not dead, they're just not in the show. So now on to Season 9, and Rick still goes missing. Judith and Carl would be like the last of the Grimes. And we still encounter Lydia. Tara still dies. And who else would die here as well? So we're going to have to boot some people here, because I think they have too much in the group. I quite like Ezekiel's death in the comics, so we're going to boot him. Oh, yeah, I forgot Michonne. Michonne also goes missing as well, so she still leaves. Actually, no, they wouldn't this time, because Carl's still here. Because the only reason Rick left, I think this was in an interview, is because he left because he had nothing really to be there for because of Carl. So I do think Rick probably wouldn't leave the show. But to give this the respect it deserves, let's say Rick and Michonne still leave. To analyse how this would have gone. So, I think Jesus still dies. Paul Monroe. And Lydia and Carl would probably be together now instead of Henry and Carl. And we can just kill Henry off there as well. Negan still encounters the Whisperers. And we still meet Alpha and Beta, Magnus group. Don't really care for Magnus group, but they're there, so they're a part of the Walking Dead. But I like Connie, actually. I do like Connie. So, Alpha's still killed by Negan. And Beta wants revenge. Carl will probably still try to go to Lydia to try and save her from the Whispers like he does in the comics. I feel like Carl and Julia would have very similar character arcs. Like, I feel like Judith being with Carl would be a lot more of a hardened survivor, because I think on the whole, there was really nobody to teach her the ways of the survivor. Like, the community was raising her, but there wasn't really anyone in the group besides Michonne. Even then, Michonne left very early on in her life, so there wasn't really anyone in the group that was with Judith. Maybe Daryl, but I mean, he was just kind of on his own, so there's not really anyone with him. I could see Carl leaving with Daryl, but I don't think he would, because he has Judith to look after. So Beta still dies. And then we have the final season where Rosita still gets bitten. I think Carl would be on the side of Maggie, you know, the Commonwealth. That he doesn't want to trust them. But I also think he would want to work with them to get supplies. Which would actually make things very interesting, because Carl is conflicted on whether or not Judith, what's best for her. So he doesn't look at Maggie. Like, he still likes and friends with Maggie, but he's looking at the bigger picture. He's looking at Judith, you know. I gotta do this for Judith, I gotta spy for her, you know. Because Carl's a lot more like Rick now, in the sense that he's looking out for someone else. Because for Rick, he is a leader, but he looks out for his family as well, which just makes things quite interesting. So I think, personally, Daryl would still go off to try and find him. Just no luck. And basically, that's kind of it for the series. And I'm not going to cover the spin-off shows, because this is just talking about the main timeline. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. And this is what I think would happen. So Dale would have died in season 5. Now, if he didn't die in the 5th season, I believe he would have died in the Negan saga, where I killed off Andrea. Like, I'm sorry, I just can't see Dale survive the entire 11 seasons. And yeah, peace for all.